some type of get-together for our entire staff. But until then, we're doing the best we can, recognizing those in our organization. All right.
What event did they? Are you going to mention the 100-year rainstorm?
Yes, yeah, we will later in the board's agenda today.
Okay.
Yes. So.
Very strange.
One of those things where what always works best when you test it before the meeting, but then, during the meeting.
And it did. It's not sharing.
I've never seen Zoom not show up. Yeah, so maybe what we need to do is just not make the video available for those on Zoom.
Yes,
and then
display
it here. Yeah, I see for some reason it's not sharing that particular window as an option.
All right.
Cool. All right. Hollywood has come.
Right.
To Yuba County.
Do we have?
It needs a Star Wars soundtrack.
So the sound comes through Zoom.
Oh.
So is that not?
It was going
So
yesterday.
the question is.
Did they share the I mean, I've never. Want to try sharing that video thing, whatever that was? I don't know if that'll do it or not.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna.
Huh.
Okay.
What do you want to do, Mary? Hold on.
So just to fill time, I guess, while they're working on that. The video that was put together, and hopefully we'll be able to see it here in a minute, was shot last week. The chair of the board joined myself, the HR director, and our PIO, Russ Brown, and Elias Mendoza in HR as well, who helps coordinate this program each year. And we announced to the award recipients at the workplace last week. And so the video kind of pulls in a little bit of that footage. So let's see here. All right, well, okay, I was gonna say, we were planning on sharing this video with all staff and the public after the board meeting today, and maybe that's something we'll do if we continue to have glitches here.
There's no volume on that computer?
Your sound.
Oops. Oops.
We're
We're
almost
closer.
there.
We're closer.
Yes.
So should I go back and do that first?
Yeah, let's. We're almost there.
Good job, Gary.
For the category of outstanding leadership, Caitlin's been absolutely incredible and just an incredible leader in a variety of ways. She is our training manager, and that handles training for all of our deputies, officers, and our dispatchers, which is an incredible component right now, especially in the current climate, to make sure that everybody is in the best position to succeed. She's the perfect one to lead that charge because she has the right attitude, and she's incredibly compassionate. She treats everybody with respect, and I think in turn she also gets that respect, and that's great quality for a leader.
Through the pandemic, it was a dramatic change for the way that CDSA had to do work. Dave Maddox identified several areas that customers could still continue to work with the county, and the county could provide that service to the customers. So Dave modified the website, came up with some changes to make the website much easier for the customers to use. Software changes, website changes, digital signatures. Dave is a go-to person doing the software implementation from the business perspective, which is a huge change for CDSA. In looking at the categories in the service excellence, Melanie Marquez fit into that box perfectly. Melanie wears many hats. She's over the front counter office, she's involved in finance, she's involved in my project team, all the time being the manager of the code enforcement group. And she is that leader, she is that oversight that ensures that the employees have what they need and are meeting the customer's needs. She's compassionate, she listens, she puts forth her ideas, she really cares about the department and cares about the people, and believes in what the county is doing and making sure that the customer's needs are met.
I nominated our institution staff for this award, which includes our kitchen workers, our control room operators, and our juvenile corrections officers, because for the past 18 or 19 months, they've been consummate teammates throughout this pandemic, working together, picking up shifts to make sure that we provide the best care we can for our youth in the facilities. And so that was pretty difficult for staff, in a 24-hour facility, managing youth and changes. So for them to be able to adapt to that so quickly was pretty remarkable. It's one of the most important but also challenging responsibilities. We're tasked with care, custody, and control of people's children in the community. We take that very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're providing the best service we can for these kids and providing them hope for a brighter future.
They're rock stars all the time. They are very dedicated to their work. They believe in the mission of the unit and especially the department. They believe in rehabilitating people, but also balancing that with public safety. We have 2 pretrial officers that work very closely together and help each other out. We have 3 full-time court officers that also spend time in court and write reports. And then we have a drug court officer as well. They are absolutely the best people. I could not ask for a better team to work with. I'm very lucky to have them in my unit.
They do not look for the praise. They do not look for recognition. They know they have a good reputation, and they take pride in that. And that's all that matters to them, is that they know they're doing a good job. The community knows about this team, especially if they've experienced some of the victimization that goes on through a crime. But I think what they really need to know is the time, effort, and commitment that they have. It is a commitment above and beyond any job duty might require of them or a job expectation might require of them. They do this job because they are passionate about what they do, and they really do care about our community members and our victims. It's a little emotional sometimes because I know how hard they work.
So if I could have the board members, we line up between the flags there, and we'll have each of the awardees come up and a little. Yep, okay, that's the rotation, Elias. All right, so the first person we'd like to have come up, the category, just to refresh everybody's memory from the video there, Outstanding Leadership Award. And so this award is presented to the employee who advances departmental or countywide initiatives and services through leadership, demonstrates and models outstanding work ethics and attitudes, exhibits selflessness and unwavering commitment and resolve to staff and the organization to do what must be done. And so this year's recipient is Caitlin Morton. All right, so our next award recipient wasn't able to make it today, but I at least wanted to read through things. So this next award is for Public Service Excellence. This award is presented to the employee who provides customers with easy access to quality information and services which are both beneficial and responsive, professionally interacts with customers, creating a positive attitude about Yuba County or their department, and goes the extra mile to meet the customer's interests. And so this year's award recipient is Dave Maddox in Community Development. All right. So the next award recipient is under Workforce Excellence. This award is for the employee who enhances quality and productivity of the workforce while demonstrating enthusiasm and dedication to their job. I can attest there's plenty of enthusiasm with this individual. Dedicated in performing their duties, committed to seeking a positive outcome with others in the workplace, and exemplifies high standards of excellence. And this year's award recipient is Melanie Marquez. All right. So the next category is Teamwork, Exceptional Teamwork Award, to be exact. And this award is for a team that provides a distinguished level of service of a countywide or department assignment, goal, or event, demonstrates a willingness to step in and help others without hesitation, dedicated to completing the overall goals of the team, uses initiative and creativity to solve priority assignments. And this year's award recipients, the Tri-County Juvenile Hall staff. Now I believe we only have a portion of the staff here. Somebody needs to man the ship, right? You're going to have a post in the way. All right, so our next category is a Sustained Effort Recognition Award. And so this award is for an individual or team that has exemplified sustained effort excellence for the past 5 consecutive years or longer in one of our categories. You know, whether it's outstanding leadership, public service excellence, workforce excellence, or exceptional teamwork. And this year, the team that was recognized is for exceptional teamwork. I guess I gave that away with the team. And this year's winner is the Adult Court Investigations Unit, which consists of Richard Horak, Dana Kennedy, Cynthia Sadlowski, Purcell Stows, Catherine Trainer, and Tom Yamamoto. Congratulations. All right, and last but not least, this last award category is one where we have all of the nominees kind of considered by our board, and we have what's called the Chairman of the Board Star Award, and this is an opportunity for the board to provide kind of a spotlight on a particular nomination. And Gary, would you like to do the honors?
Sure. So the Chairman of the Board Star Award provides the opportunity to place a spotlight on Yuba County employees and/or departments who made an outstanding contribution to the county, a department, and/or our community through their leadership, their creativity, their cooperation, and hard work outside of their normal scope of work. The Chairman of the Board Star Award recognizes those Yuba County employees who have dedicated their passions, talents, and skills and made a significant impact in one of the following ways: exceptional commitment to volunteerism by helping with special projects or ongoing activities for the past year, exemplary leadership, creativity, cooperation, and hard work in service to others, and/or they made an outstanding contribution to the county, department, or community through exceptional service. This year's 2021 Chairman of the Board Star Award winners are the Yuba County Probation Victim Services Department, which include Terry Ayers, Diana Beeler, James Davis, John Escovedo, Shelley Gage, Caitlin Haynes, Valerie Hams, Carrie Peters, Liz Rodriguez, and at the request of the Victim Services team, I'd like Eric Runge to come up as well, because a quote from the team is, "There is no great team without a great leader."
wraps things up for this year's awards ceremony. And again, I just want to thank the board for allowing us to do this each year, and thank those that nominate folks that they recognize in our workforce, because really it's nice to be recognized, and it's nice for those that take the effort to nominate others in the workforce for, whether it's outstanding, leadership or teamwork, etc. So thank you, everyone. All right.
Great, thank you. Any comments from the board?
I don't know if you've ever been to RCRC or some of the other meetings we go to. I'm extremely proud of Yuba County and the Yuba County staff, the many things that you've done. When I've been supervisor, we don't recognize Camp Singer as one of the more unique institutions in our community and one of the most needed institutions. And there's a silent group that we never see in the front or here. And we'd like to thank them because they're the guys that were out in the mud and the blood and the beer during that rainstorm that nobody wanted to go out in. Even Willie Nelson bailed out. But thank you very much for this, for staff being as proficient and as effective as you've been all these years. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm a little new at all this, but I've had some chance to get around and visit some departments and meet all the people. And not only my impression, but everybody that is familiar with Yuba County is very impressed and proud of the staff that we have. So thank you again.
Echoing what was said before, we get charts and graphs about what we produce and what our staffing was in relation to previous levels, and we do more with less. And so our staff has decreased in number, but increased in quality. So thank you all for what you do.
Just to kind of echo what's already been said, I think Yuba County has a reputation for being a can-do county. Right? We tend not to say no. We tend to figure out how to get something done, how to take care of our constituents, and that's because of all of you and because of your attitude. So I thank you every day for everything that every single employee in this county does to serve our residents. So it's greatly appreciated, and congratulations again to the winners. Okay, so next we're going to move on to our second special presentation, which is item 552, 2021, receive yearly update on Yuba County Historic Resources Commission for 2021. And while we get ready to do that, we'll definitely take about a minute or two recess.
All aboard! We can show you how. Live streaming can be simple and not expensive. You may already have the basic tools right in your hand. But it's more than just pushing live to communicate effectively. That's where Yuba-Sutter.live and Live Streaming YS on Facebook can help you. Make it easy to jump in. Just give us a call at 530-301-2931 or visit our website, www.yuba-sutter.live. Yuba-Sutter's home of live streaming and live streaming tools, live streaming services, technology, and training. Live streaming is yuba-sutter.live.
People about preserving our history. They're awesome to work with, and everybody brings something different to the commission, all about preserving and saving our history and moving forward with it. And thank you for your continued support. So I'm going to try to get this PowerPoint running here. David Reed from the Arts Council put this together, and if I have problems, I'm going to ask him to come and help. So here we go. So this is a copy of our mission statement. It's one of California's original 27 counties was founded on February 18th in 1850. Yuba County is California's gateway to the historic motherlode country. Here you will find a diverse landscape, boast of grand rivers, thriving farmland, friendly communities, and numerous recreation possibilities that extend into the Sierra foothills. We have that small town feeling that so many people are seeking. We were founded in 2006 to advise the Board of Supervisors on historical matters within the county. The commission shall endeavor to discover and identify persons, events, places of historic importance within the county, to make recommendations relating to the preservation of historical sites and structures, to coordinate with historical groups and museums within the county to encourage their development, and to cooperate with and obtain assistance from related agencies. The commission will also take on the lead role of helping to develop sites, signage at key historic locations within the county to help preserve and celebrate our county's history. And we have some new projects. We're just getting started. If you haven't heard about them, hold on to your seats because they're pretty exciting. We've had some commission members have to move on to other things. So recently we now have 2 vacancies. Supervisor Vasquez and Supervisor Blazer are aware of these and are asking our support and yours in filling these 2 positions. This commission is pretty specialized, and people are a little bit afraid to join it if they don't have a lot of historical background. So these 2 supervisors are actively looking for people to fill their roles. And so you can see here, we have Plumas Lake is filled with Ron, and Pat is still from the Wheatland, and she's our acting secretary. Myself representing the foothills as chair. Robert Cole was just appointed, Mary, a couple weeks ago. So he's very new. The city of Marysville, council member Stuart Gilchrist. And thank you for adding a few more at-large people. They do not have to reside in that precinct to be a member. Kathy Smith, Chris Pettico, David Reed, and Roberta D'Arcy are all at large, and Roberta is our vice president. Russ Brown is still our active communication advisor. Our first meetings are held monthly, first Wednesday. We've had to have a lot of Zoom meetings as everybody else, so we're hoping to get back in. We have a permanent location now at the Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture Center in Marysville. Some of the things that we actually got done during the time of COVID, we're still working on the assessment records books. And I was wondering if you supervisors could appoint 1 person in the county to help us get this project completed. Kevin was active on this. We've been working on this for 5 years. These records are the only records. They are still downstairs in the basement at the courthouse, deteriorating. We have a room, we have shelving, we have people to move them. We just need the clearance to get down there. There are 1,600 volumes we have to look through to pick out the assessment records, and we just need a support of the supervisors. It's rather challenging to get down there. You have to get in with a guardian. There are locked files. So we're still working there. These records are the only ones, there's no copies. We need to preserve them if we can. We have a system in place for making copies once we get them out of the basement and into our room. If you're long timers here, you remember growing up with Stan Gelling, who was a satirical cartoonist for the Peel Democrat for 25 years. Our big promotional event will be happening at the Yuba-Sutter Arts Council in January. And we're fortunate enough to have a friend who is going to loan us some of the 300 original of his drawings. And so we will be featuring that as our historical presentation next year. The assessor, in the scene that we did the district attorney's research back to 1850, Steve Knuckles thought it would be a good idea if we also got a list of all the assessors. Due to COVID, we've had a hard time getting to records, but excuse me, we're not actively pursuing that. As you know, the Yuba County Library is going through an extensive remodel, and they wish to get rid of all of the copies of the newspapers there. And as you'll remember, the library now has a digital reel, and they had come in and made copies of all of those, but it's not totally accurate. So now we have taken those newspapers and are going through them and making sure that they all are copied. We're working with the University of California at Riverside, and right now they are temporarily stored at the old Packard Library, and we're working actively on that project now. We were contacted by the Bank of America in San Francisco. They have the original Rideout Bank vault, and also that we came into possession of the 1889 ledger from that bank. So we're working with San Francisco. Supervisor Blazer assures me if we can bring that 300-ton safe back to Marysville, he will find a floor space that will hold it. So that is a long-term project we're working with the San Francisco Bank of America. We are working on, as research consultants, for the Three Rivers History Trail sign project. And in that, we are partnering with the Three Rivers Parkway, which is the county, the Yuba Water Agency, Mary Aaron Museum, and Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture. Right now, we're working with starting the signs in Marysville, and it's an enormous project. It's going to be a long-range project, and all of these signs will be similar in size, but they will have a QR code. And so when you come with your smartphone, you can put it up there, and a docent will come on and tell you the history of that particular area. We're very excited about that. We're also actively doing digital copies of biographies, I Remember program, and those will be available online, and we'll have a storage facility at the Mary Aaron Museum and possibly at the library. And these will be some of our citizens just telling their story because they remember when. We have a new website and a new face page. The county went to a new system and the old one was lost. And so David Reed and Ron Eberhardt and Russ Brown will be acting as advisors to that. So when people say, what is there to do in Yuba County? Well, we will have a presence and they can find out. Some of the projects, had to be curtailed, but we're working on them. And so we have been assisting the Yuba Water Agency. They are going to do a film and a biography of the history of water in the county. We've partnered with Mary Aaron Museum. We do a tour the first Saturdays, and we've been doing that for several years. We've been assisting Mary Aaron Museum and Yuba-Sutter Arts and Cultures with a grant-funded sign project, and this will be part of the one I just spoke about, Three Rivers History Trail sign. The McMurtry building, which is across from Mary Aaron Museum, recently sold to people out of town, and so we have volunteered to help them with the preservation of that and the history of that historical building. Caltrans is, I know you've been up by Parks Bar Bridge and all that transformation going on. And they took the Timbuktu sign down years ago, and we're helping them remember to put it back. The Dobbins Grange has disbanded, and when they did, they had a banner that was hanging there since 1949, listing 35 of the business merchants active in Marysville with a mural of Lake Francis. and they donated that to us. Also a picture of the Colgate water plant. And so those have been placed. The picture is now at the water agency, and the banner will be on display at the Old Packard Library. The banner is 20 by 18. It was not an easy project to take it down and relocate it. Some of you have been on the commission for a while and remember the Bush photo collection was donated to us many years ago, 2009. And with that, we have moved forward with an identification, the Day of Remembrance, and a project David will speak to you about. We've also completed the district attorneys. Lila and Lola, who are twins, who were born and raised in Arboga, the ladies gave us a portfolio of their life growing up there. And the vault doors and the bank ledger also were donated in addition to the actual safe. So again, I want to thank you on behalf of the commission for your continued support. And David Reed is going to come up and tell you about some future plans and a little more identification of what else is going on. So David?
Thank you, Sue. Chairman Bradford, members of the board, staff, and members of the public. Are there any left? Thanks. This is my first opportunity to come before you in my new role as a Yuba County Historic Resources Commission member. And this is, today I'm wearing we're Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture, so today I'm wearing the culture part of what I do as a commission member. I've been working with Sue, and a lot of the work we've done has been thanks to Sue and all she's taught me over the years about Yuba County history and some of the projects we've brought to the forefront. The commission is particularly interested in continuing to take on a leadership role in the preservation and celebration of our county's unique and colorful history. Collaboration is a key to, I think, our success going forward. And you'll see some examples of that. Sue touched on it, but getting coordinated and collaborating with some of the organizations in the community. We're very siloed. This is the arts community that I work in, as well as the, I think, culture and history side of things as well. And I think we've proven and can continue to prove the power of collaboration as we go forward. We also want to commit to being all-inclusive as we represent history from, from 10,000 years ago forward, or whenever the folks came down through the Bering Strait and down to our part of North America. So we want to continue to recognize and celebrate that history that far back, as well as 1849 forward. So Sue mentioned the Faces of Internment photo project, as we call it. This is where we took that collection of Bush photo studio images of Japanese Americans taken in 1942 and presented them to the public in large 20 by 30 black and whites in our gallery in Marysville, just to show those folks, to kind of put a face on the whole issue of internment. And it was interesting because a lot of them we had names for, but during the exhibit, family members, friends, neighbors came forward and said, "Oh, she was my babysitter. That's Mrs. Yamashiro," or "Oh gosh, that was my mother's best friend." And so we got some additional names. That's what it looked like in our gallery. So pretty exciting project. It's sort of taking history and presenting it through an art form, if you will. And we'll see more examples of that. I think most of you are familiar with the Arboga Assembly Center Memorial Site that we put together. Again, thanks to Sue for the leadership on that. We collaborated with various groups, the commission, Sue and her team before I became a member, as well as the Marysville Japanese American Citizens League in presenting this important part of our local history. Councilman and designer Stuart Gilchrist came up with the original concepts. Dan Turner and his welding department team, even during COVID, he had students on campus creating the steel structures you'll see. And we also did what Sue described, which was the addition of the QR codes to each of the murals out at the park. These were some of the original inspiration boards. That's kind of the layout of the park right there in the middle. That was the original sign that was put up near the site by Sue and the team during the original dedication, which was 2010? 2009, I'll get it right. The top mural is just the mural that we did related to the grant that we got, which is in the on the building adjacent to the Buddhist church in Marysville. If you haven't seen it, it's 125 feet long and pretty spectacular, kind of telling the story of the Japanese migration to, in this case, California. So this is the park. Sue and the commission had gotten the original bronze plaque ordered and embedded in a piece of rock. Those are the steel structures. We use some of those Japanese portraits. And it's a trail that you take, kind of a semicircular trail around the backside of the barracks. You see the murals, you access the QR codes, and in 30 minutes, if you knew nothing about this part of our history, you'll be up to speed. We just recently, as in a couple of weeks ago, installed that black sign frame and sign, which is perpendicular to the road, so that as you're going down Broadway, now you kind of understand. You look out in the field, you see these faces and these steel things. Now it's a little more immediate what's going on there. One of the JACL board members, Roy Hadamiya, donated that. He built it for his farm years ago to hang a Sunsweet sign. So we repurposed it and installed it, and it really adds something to the site. Sue mentioned the Facebook page, which is gaining more and more activity. We're trying to make regular posts to increase the folks that follow it. The website's still really in development, but we've got some basics there. Sue mentioned the tours. She's such a big part of that. Once a month, taking people out and showing them locations, or recently meeting in our theater, the Burroughs Theater in Marysville, to take people through some of the little unique aspects of our history. I mentioned collaboration. We've talked about the history trail. Long-range goal, we'd love to develop a smartphone app. I've talked to people literally who have come to town and said, gee, what's the history of Yuba County? And Visit Yuba-Sutter has certainly made some progress with what they've done, but I think putting it into an app would really be great. Gary, I'll have to talk to you at some point to help guide us in that process in terms of budgeting and what have you. In the meantime, maybe at least a printed trail guide map, some brochure, something simple to highlight some key historic sites in Yuba County. That's the Facebook page on the left. If you do social media, please be sure to follow Yuba County Historic Resources Commission on Facebook. And again, on the right is sort of the draft of the new website. We're still, excuse me, building content for that, and we'll continue to improve the graphic appearance of it. I mentioned the app. This is one from Brattleboro, Vermont. Just really makes it easy to access sites and points of interest in any community. So this will require funding. The app is an expensive process. The little bit of research I've done, printing a Yuba County history guide might be a little more short-term accessible. The development of the history trail, I know, is a big project with Lon Hadamiya and his team and the water agencies involved. We also, Mary Aaron Museum has some funding, so we're going to begin by putting up some demonstration signs at the Mary Aaron and a couple of other sites in Marysville once I go through the Marysville Planning Commission process to get approval. And then the really big picture, maybe the ultimate creation of a Yuba County History Museum. We'd like to kind of head in that direction. Next steps. Our commission is requesting the county give us some degree of fiscal autonomy. I don't know how that works in the context of being a commission of the county, but maybe it's Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture asking as the nonprofit fiscal sponsor, as we are doing for the Cotton Rosser Bronze Statue Project. Rather than creating a separate 501c3, maybe there's a way to do it. I'm not empire building with Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture. If there's a better way to do it, please let us know. But it would be great to get some funding, whether it's me writing grants for this kind of work, additional funding from the county when it becomes available, but some way to begin to implement these projects. The Arboga Memorial Site Park was developed because of a grant I got from the California State Library. They have money set aside for those kinds of things. So something for future consideration. We'll come back in the spring or whenever the next budget cycle begins and make a request. And if between now and then we can set up a facility to do that, to receive funding for the commission in some form, then we'd appreciate that support. With that in mind, any questions? Yes, sir.
I've seen some things that you're working on. I really would appreciate you having some of the more positive aspects of Beal. And
I'm sorry, Beal?
Beal.
Oh, love it.
And the SR 71 and what it meant for the U2, and the story behind that is fascinating. It's worldwide, and also the fact that Marysville was a seaport, and this was where every 49er went to make their fortune in the gold fields.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's should be the prime focus of what Marysville is. You know, the rich history of the Silver Dollar Saloon. It's
Absolutely.
So.
Totally agree. I would point out that you mentioned Beale at our Veterans Art Park that we created on B Street, just north of Highway 20. We did a kind of a shout out to Beale. In fact, the Beale Public Affairs Department graphics arts team developed a 4-foot by 8-foot mural that's sort of a snapshot of all the operations based at Beale. So there's one little piece of it there. The Cotton Rosser project on First Street and Park Plaza, right just to the right of Silver Dollar, will certainly accentuate that whole corridor, in addition to the Caltrans beautification project, which will take care of the tunnel and all that concrete there, and I'm involved with that project as well. So I totally agree. Celebrating those aspects of our history are part of it.
We've always been involved with the security of the nation. And when you sit down and talk to some of the pilots that you have that are living right now, can you imagine going 3 times the speed of sound, shooting a star? And the SR-71, the U-2 were all slide rule completed aircraft. The history of the Skunk Works would probably tell you a little bit about that. But
absolutely,
rich history here. The tank training area when the original Camp Beale was founded.
So I'd love to work on that. And,
thank you.
And I'd appreciate any additional input, ideas for locations. We want to include that. We spent a lot of time with Brian Schull. He's one of our key veteran artists and all the work he's done. So love to.
We
love
also
to have him
have
involved.
Peggy Ball's original books about when Beale was formed, and it was an Air Force base. And we have tried to work with Beale Air Force Base on doing tours, but national security, you can't take people out there, and the Beale historian. So it's something that we have in our background, and we'd love to follow it up for you, Andy.
Well,
Thank
you've got a rich supply of firsthand experience in Tony Bivacqua. You know, he's one of 12 that flew both the SR and the U-2. There's only 12 pilots that actually flew them.
Maybe we can work with Brian when he gets his museum up and going and collaborate on that, because he's been working on that for years. That would be a great project. Thank you.
Have any of you been in?
Huh?
Gallery 1? Have you all been in Brian Schull's gallery?
No.
Get a hold of him and go see it.
Every time I knock on the door, he's gone. But
finally got in, but it's that'll be a destination art gallery when he gets that open.
I stole one of his sayings that you know, any landing you can walk away from is a good one.
You bet.
But if you can use the airplane again, it's a great one. So.
Absolutely.
Okay.
He's an amazing man. So yes, thank you for that, Mr. Vasquez. Anything else?
No, thank you very much.
I've been around for a while. So I've seen numerous strategic plans involving primarily Marysville and the area. I don't know how many, but they all focus primarily on history. That's where they all start. And I'm glad to see hopefully we can get this a little momentum going on this history, because not everybody always sees it all the time. And sometimes I almost feel that it's getting away from us. So we need to bring it more in focus, and so it's kind of right in people's faces, because it is the primary thing down here.
Well, we're willing, and with your support, we'll make it happen.
I know where you are.
I heard a supporter here, volunteer.
My question was for staff. I believe she had brought up the need for a chaperone for the basement records previously, and I was just curious what the obstacle was there. Can a CSO, or do we need an armed deputy for that, or what do we need to let her have access?
I pushed the button too fast. So there's a variety of issues surrounding moving the records up from the basement, but more than happy to have Russ Brown continue to work with the commission on that. The records that are in the basement, there's different elected officials that have different records down there, and that seemed to complicate
Yes,
the
a lot of
issue.
them are sealed. You have to have a chaperone to go down.
Yeah, so it's not like armed guard, like the sheriff's department. It's more of a representative of the respective elected office.
And so she doesn't have to have one from each elected office simultaneously down there with her.
No, but we also had a preservation expert go down and take a look, and they said that the conditions in the basement were actually conducive to preserving what's down there. And it's more of an access issue, I believe, than a preservation issue.
Yeah, and
with
that's
the
step
records.
2. Just getting them up is step 1.
Right. So we're continuing to work with the commission on that, and that's something I can follow up with Russ Brown and have him coordinate with the respective district or respective offices that need to grant permission.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You guys were very busy last year.
Yes,
that was a very
we're always
impressive
busy.
list of accomplishments. So, and I'm excited about some of the things you have planned in the future. What I think especially piques my interest is the Three Rivers History Trail.
Thank you.
It's very exciting. I was in Monterey, I don't know, a month or so ago, and they have something similar there that I was unaware of until I was there and kind of looking for something to do. I had a few hours of free time. And, it's like a 2 mile and same thing. There's a QR code and or a phone number at each stop. And, you can scan it, you can call it, and you enter the number, and it reads you all about that spot. So you can learn everything you want to know about that, or you can read it or whatever. So as you move forward into hopefully someday an app with some funding, that's exciting as well. One thing that I wish I had when I was in Monterey with respect to their app was really just, it kind of had a map and the ability to click on each one of those sites and hear the audio for it. But what it didn't have was a GPS function that could walk me to the next site. So you kind of had to struggle to do that. And I would expect an app to be able to, here's, you're at stop 1, next we're going to stop 2, I'm going to tell you how to walk there. And it didn't have that functionality. So I know that's down the road a ways, but just something to put in the back of your mind as a user of a similar tool, something that I felt was kind of would have made it an even better experience. So
Great input.
Yeah, very, very exciting. Thanks for asking about the records, Supervisor. I'd also ask staff to maybe give some consideration with respect to the best options for funding that were kind of brought up. Is it easiest to do that through Yuba-Sutter Arts and Culture, or is there another recommendation that staff might have for the board and for the commission? So if the board's in agreement with that, we can have that looked into. Okay.
We'll do our part.
Yes. There's one there already. There's a watchtower there. Unique. Would you like a tour? We can do a private one.
No.
Gary, thank you. This county has the history, and we need to share it. Bring people here.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. I think I had shared with David a few months ago. I had a friend who had someone visiting from out of town, and they said, we're really into history. We know there's a lot of history there. What should we go? What should we see? And, sadly, I have to admit, I didn't really know where to point them. I know we have tons of history, but I didn't know what was open when and when it was available. And, so I kind of struggled to tell them where to go and when they could go there. And so, even having, like you said, a trail map that, has a PDF copy available online would be helpful for that kind of thing. And I know there's some resources that have been put together to help with that. David sent them to me. So those were helpful as well. But I think it's a great way to bring people to the community and, get them to fall in love with it while they're here. So, and learn lots of great
tourism
stuff.
equals economic development.
Right.
Any questions?
We'll invite them back next year, and we'll have something for them to come and see.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So next up is public communications. Any person may speak about any subject of concern, provided it is within the jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisors and not already on today's agenda. The total amount of time allotted for receiving such public comments shall be limited to a total of 15 minutes, and each individual or group shall be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Prior to this time, speakers are requested to fill out a request to speak card and submit it to the clerk of the Board of Supervisors. If you are participating via Zoom and wish to comment, please use the raise hand function or *9 if you're participating via phone. So do we have some? So I do not see anyone on Zoom at this point. I don't know if you see anyone, Mary. Okay, so do you have some cards from folks in the room?
Yes, we do. First one we have is Courtney Ortega.
Morning, Courtney.
Just a second, I'm sorry. I did want to request 5 minutes this morning on behalf of the group I'm speaking for.
We're only going to allow 3.
Okay, I'll summarize. So I did want to present this graph to you all. This represents the COVID statistics for Yuba County over the last 20 months. The red line represents the cases. The blue line represents the hospitalizations, and the purple line represents the deaths in Yuba County. As you'll see, as it goes to the right, those are the total numbers. So it's not that COVID is more deadly today than it was 18 months ago. It's that is the total allotted numbers on the right-hand side. So I wanted you guys to see this in front of your faces, and you know, what comes to my mind is, does that look like an emergency? Does that look like a reason to shut the schools, shut all the businesses, put people on house arrest? In my opinion, it doesn't. It looks like we got a crazy sensitive testing agent, but it doesn't look like an emergency. And I think that it's a really important graph to look at to understand what we're doing as far as policy goes. So the reason that I'm here today is that between the months of April and May of this year, this petition was circulated within the Yuba-Sutter community. It gathered strong support considering that the petition was only circulated for 6 weeks, and it only had about a handful of volunteers collecting signatures. This petition gathered 1,075 signatures throughout both counties for the removal and replacement of Bi-County Health Officer Fong Liu. Support for replacement is based on exaggerated, authoritarian, and unnecessary policies, which do not support local data or facts. Dr. Liu's advice or health orders have not served the people of Yuba-Sutter, they have not kept them safe, and they do not support the way of life which the local population sees as appropriate or desired in lieu of a response to COVID-19, variants, or other medical emergencies within Yuba-Sutter. I'm gonna give you each a copy of the petition along with the signatures that it gathered. I do have the full letter, which I was hoping to read today on the cover, so I'll just hope that you guys can read that by yourselves. But Yuba-Sutter Board of Supervisors are voted in by the people of Yuba and Sutter. The government buildings, programs, and salaries are paid for by the people of Yuba-Sutter. The people of Yuba-Sutter have the right in choosing how their county is run and who it is run by. The following citizens who've signed this petition from the counties Yuba and Sutter are requesting the following action from their boards of supervisors. 1, the immediate firing of Bi-County Health Officer Fong Liu, and 2, the immediate audit and investigation of the Health and Human Services Department. In addition to the firing of Bi-County Health Officer, the people of Yuba-Sutter are requesting an ordinance to be created, which states that no county employee may live outside the county they serve, and 2, that a citizen hiring committee must be created for the hiring of the next county health officer and for every health officer and county department head from now on. So like I said, I will be giving you each this petition. I would encourage you all to please look through it, check out your constituents, and then I would also request movement from the board, whether you want to discuss that later today in the meeting, if you want to discuss an agendized item on an open or closed meeting. And I'm really interested to see what you guys will do with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Helen. Do we have additional public comment, Mary?
Yes, we do. Next one is Joanna Lasaga.
For short people, this is like distracting. Gonna move it aside so we can see you, Andy. So I'm guessing that none of you signed up for this, being a supervisor in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. Let's be honest, this hasn't been an easy task for anyone involved. But at the end of the day, it's a position that you all chose to accept. And your role, first and foremost, is to protect our citizens. The fact that you're having to do it in these times doesn't lessen your responsibility. If anything, it increases it. Part of the process by which you become a supervisor includes an oath of office, correct? Every single one of you swore an oath to uphold the constitutions of the state and this country in accordance to Title 41 of the state code. And you all know that the constitutions protect our unalienable rights, correct? Article 6, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, otherwise known as the Supremacy Clause, states that the federal constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any time a state makes a law that contradicts the federal constitution, it is notwithstanding. It's void. How about the Fifth Amendment? The right to due process is not violated. One's rights cannot be taken away without due process. The Ninth Amendment, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. The 14th Amendment, nor shall any state deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without due process. So where is all this mask mandate and vaccination mandate coming from? An executive order. The governor claims his authority comes from an Emergency Health Powers Act. Well, this act clearly states the only way a person can be deprived of their rights, even in an emergency, is through due process. Quarantines, vaccines, masks, they cannot be forced. Furthermore, our system was designed with 3 parts for a reason, so that one part never gets out of control. The executive branch into which the governor is elected cannot make law. Would you say we all have an inherent right to breathe fresh air? Do you own the citizens? Are any of you qualified to diagnose a communicable disease? Do you have consent from any of the citizens to endure medical interventions? So we've established that you don't really know the law and you don't seem to have the authority, yet your policy, which is very far from anything considered to be law, which is in opposition to the Supremacy Clause and clearly contradicts our God-given rights protected by the 5th, 9th, and 14th Amendments. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in these orders that you are blindly following? It better be a 10, because every one of you can be held personally reliable by each and every one of these parents under Title 42, Section 1983 for deprivation of rights under color of law and simulating legal process. Depriving citizens of their rights is a serious crime, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. Your confidence in forcing medical interventions on citizens without written consent better be a 10, because there are a number of people right here who clearly do not consent, and since you approve the policies, each one of you can be held personally liable. So I wasn't taught civics in high school, but believe me, with these mandates, you are causing people to unleash a whole new level of fury. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next person we have is Rebecca Carlson.
Okay.
Hi, gentlemen. I'm from Yuba County, and we talked a lot about history today. You gave probably a good 45 minutes to the people to do this presentation on history. So I'm going to talk about Nuremberg Codes because that's history, and history is currently repeating itself. And so it goes right along with firing this horrible health director. Why does Home Depot get to stay open and you shut down the Chinese garden here in Marysville? Why are people losing their businesses? While Home Depot, Lowe's, all these big box stores get to do whatever they want. It's not about health, and Dr. Liu is horrible. She has killed people in this community, and she needs to be fired, and she needs to be investigated. This is ridiculous. We're not gonna put up with this. So Nuremberg Codes, I'm just gonna sum it up super quick. This is what they put international law when Nazi Germany ended, and they began to, in Nuremberg, Germany, they investigated the doctors who had disgusting, inhumane things done with children and experimented on people. exactly what's happening now with this mandate and these forced vaccines. Dr. Lou's having some bus go over to Marysville High School and kids are able to forge their parents' signatures. People are dying. So voluntary consent, scientific studies, prior knowledge, injury and suffering. Experiment should be set up in a way that voids unnecessary physical and mental suffering and injury. Experiment should not be conducted when there is reason to believe risk or death or serious injury. How many people in Yuba County, what are the stats right now coming from Dr. Lou about syphilis? We're not tracking that anymore. Syphilis is a deadly disease and people in our community are dying from it, along with how many suicides have happened in this community, because I know that there are some. And that's happening because of the direct mandates and the direct things that Dr. Lou is requiring you guys to do, and you're just going along with it. And Randy Fletcher can't even show up to a stinking meeting. Anyways, researchers must stop experiments at any point when contribution or continuation could result in harmful consequences to the participant. Going on from that, right here, stats, and I'll email these to you, but these are stats of, and you can look them up, number of adverse reactions. It's almost 1 million. It's unbelievable. Adverse reactions. Number of life-threatening events, almost 20,000. 20,000, that means life-threatening? Yeah, they died. And here we are, we're still, oh yeah, this vaccine's safe. It's not a vaccine, it's an experiment, and it's disgusting, and we're not even gonna know the results until years from now. So just like Joanna said, think about it, because people in all positions will be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, no more cards.
Okay. One last call. Any additional public comment in the room or on Zoom? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to county departments. So first up is 567, 2021, Human Resources. The Sheriff's Department, County Administrator, and Human Resources Department recommend approval of the Sheriff's Department's Lateral Incentive Program, as it will assist the Sheriff in quickly hiring lateral employees in the classifications of Deputy Sheriff, Correctional Officer, and Public Safety Dispatcher. Morning, Jill.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Jill Abel, Human Resources Director, and this morning I'm asking your approval to basically reinstate a lateral program for our Sheriff's Department for hiring lateral employees in 3 classifications: Deputy Sheriff, Correctional Officer, and Public Safety Dispatcher. This program was in place for a couple of years. It expired in March. We actually met and conferred with the Deputy Sheriff's Association and discussed with the department who has a need to hire employees in these classifications and would really benefit from hiring lateral employees that have experience. So this program actually provides some incentives for employees who move from other locations into these positions, and would give them some leave balances when they first start, would reduce the probationary period for 2 of the classifications actually, from 18 months to 12 months. And in addition to that, would give them a lump sum payment payable in 2 installments. The first would be after they complete what's called the Field Training Officer Program, or the program that they're in training for. The second would be when they complete their probationary period. So we're wanting to do this. The staff report says it would expire October 31st, 2021. That's a typo, my apologies. The program would expire in 2024. And that's correct in the policy. So we're asking to do this for a 3-year period to try to bring on board individuals in those classifications. I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions from the board?
Jill, can you just refresh the public on how many people we're looking for in the department?
Yeah, so we actually, trying to think of how many vacant positions. We're probably looking for about 15 deputies, I believe, 12 to 15. Now that would be if there are other, sometimes there's attrition or other vacancies that we have to fill. If people get promoted, for example, in corrections and move into patrol, then we have to backfill those positions. We may be looking for a few dispatchers. And while we do hire trainees, or we do hire individuals who are new into law enforcement, that training program is extensive. So a lateral program would mean that we're hiring people who have experience and then can move very quickly into being on their own and on patrol, for example.
And it's a tough market.
It's a very tough market.
Yeah.
Any additional questions?
Yeah, so the training, since it is extensive, there's a cost that can be associated with it, and the cost of the bonus or the incentive is less than the cost of the training. And is it by a margin of 2, 5? What percentage would you say is that increase or effectiveness?
You know, I would have to talk to the sheriff about that, but because when you're in the field training officer program, for example, you have one-on-one time with the field training officer who is now training you, and you're not on your own performing work, right? You're doing it in concert with someone else. So that could be, you know, truncated significantly for someone who's lateral because they're really only learning procedures in Yuba County. And so really it would be the factor of that other person that's with them and the productivity of that person and their salary. But it's kind of tough for me to know.
Would you say it's at least twice as effective?
Probably, yes.
Okay.
Through the chair, would Sheriff Anderson eliminate the filter, so to speak? And is this going to work?
Well, it has. It's shown to work, and I think what we don't see is many of the people, we were successfully able to get several laterals during this last time frame. And what we don't see, and I don't know if we can put a price tag on, is many of these deputies have advanced training already when they come, and that would cost us thousands of dollars to get them to a certain level. Field training officer training, basic interview and interrogation, all those cost the county money and come from the sheriff's budget. And whether it be airplane tickets, sending them down to Southern California, which many of these trainings happen, when we are able to get somebody here who already has that training, to me, sure. It's very cost effective. And it's hard to put a dollar amount without seeing the post background, the training that particular deputy has, or dispatcher or CO. But the ultimate goal is to get the most experienced people that we have, and other entities have already invested their time and money into them. So it will work, you know, in having the ability. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we're going to be able to successfully hire 15 laterals, but if we could get 2 or 3, it just changes our staffing levels tremendously.
I was optimistic.
I know one of the
no, so I would say it's probably closer if you include.
I know that you have more opportunities for you know, other avenues for them to explore, such as search and rescue, boat patrol, so many things. You'll flying on nets and off helicopters for grows. To me, that's always been a draw for the sheriff's department here, is the ability to grow.
And it's well known that, you know, deputies at the Yuba County Sheriff's Department get to experience a lot as opposed to other agencies. I mean, our deputies handle everything in the field from, you know, basic theft all the way up to the most severe crime, and the opportunities for growth that you have here. So, you know, it happens pretty quickly. It's still hard for us to compete, and I think we'll never be able to compete with some of the Placers, Sacramento counties, just because of the money. But having these types of packages to be able to present to people with some other things that we're working on, and HR has been outstanding, it's been great, and we're trying to be creative in how we recruit people and retain people. And now more than ever in California, it's not exclusive to Yuba County. The law enforcement profession is struggling. We're struggling. We're not seeing as many applicants as we have in the past. So being creative with things like this is going to be imperative moving forward.
Have you by any chance asked the real estate board to provide an agent that can get the new hires into a house with the interest rates the way they are now and the availability of homes anywhere else but Yuba County?
Absolutely, and we're actively looking at some relocation services right now, relocation incentives for people to move into the county. And obviously, we want our workers to live within the jurisdiction that they provide services to. So we have meetings coming up here in the next week, this week, more specifically to talk about some other ways. And that's exactly right, some incentive for moving to Yuba County and maybe some assistance in relocation.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to point out is kind of to speak to your thoughts on, someone that has more experience in another agency would be even more valuable. The incentive is tiered. So if you have less than 3 years experience or 3 years or less, it's going to be a different amount than if you have more than 5 years of experience. And so those dollar amounts do differ.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I think if we were able, if we were talking about a specific individual, we would be able to give you a price tag as to how much that deputy has cost in training to this point. And I think that would shed more light on this. And we could do that with some past hires that we've had, but I think you'll find that it's going to be cost savings for Yuba County for us to do this.
I haven't already made the motion. I'll make the motion to recommend approval.
Second. Okay, I have a first from Supervisor Vasquez and a second from Supervisor Fuhrer. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, we'll return it to the board. I would just say I think it's important that we do this. Not only do we have existing positions that we're trying to fill and retain, but thanks to Measure K, we have additional positions that we're trying to fill and retain after that to serve the community. And so I think we have to do all we can, particularly if it's cost effective, as mentioned that it is, to do this and really saves us in the long run and provides better service. So with that, roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez?
Yes, with the caveat that it's not in the money, that a lot of officers choose to go out in the mud and the blood and the beer. They do it because of their sense of duty to the citizens of Yuba County, and it's not always the dollars that matter. Okay, that was a yes.
Supervisor Blazer?
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer?
Yes, with the caveat that we should have more CSOs.
Supervisor Bradford?
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher is absent. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, next we are going to move on to item 562, 2021, Community Development and Services. Adopt resolution approving the broadband master plan and provide direction on county broadband policy. 20 minutes. Good morning, Ian. Should work. There we go. Look at that. Works beautifully. It'll work.
Adjusting.
When IT has a problem, you got problems.
Check, check. Can everybody hear me okay? Great.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and fellow board members. My name is Ian Scott. I'm your broadband project manager. I'd like to start by thanking your board for making broadband a board priority. I'm here to provide an update today on the broadband master plan and the broadband project more generally. When we're talking about broadband, a lot of technical jargon tends to get thrown around. Among these, we have middle mile, which is broadband fiber optic lines originating from internet service provider networks or from third-party middle mile installers who install, manage, and lease fiber space to internet service providers. When it comes to speed, when we're discussing broadband, download speed is the first number in an X/X speed per second listing, with the example of 25 download, 3 upload megabytes per second. Of course, the upload speed, the second number in the example of 25 download, 3 upload. The federal broadband standard is set by the Federal Communications Commission and is currently 25 download, 3 upload megabytes per second. ISP is an acronym short for Internet Service Provider. And while we are discussing broadband key terms and acronyms, the California Public Utility Commission is the oversight agency in the state of California for regulating ISPs, and the acronym for them is the CPUC. Chief among the most common issues in broadband is that it is very expensive. Depending upon deployment type, middle mile broadband can cost for aerial fiber deployment anywhere from $21,614 to $66,460 per mile, or for underground fiber deployment, considerably more expensive, ranging from $98,760 to $392,000 per mile. The primary differences between aerial fiber deployment and underground, aerial fiber is very similar in the way that it is installed and run as, say, power lines. And as such, it is more vulnerable to adverse weather effects or wildfires, whereas underground fiber deployment is generally considered to be more secure from environmental hazards and entails placing fiber in underground trenches, which are usually disturbed in the process of the public right-of-way near roads. Another broadband issue is that broadband deployment is currently unclear. Data from the CPUC is reported by the ISPs, which unfortunately is less reliable than if it was collected by the individual subscriber household level. And we will revisit this issue in subsequent slides. Data is needed. ISPs are not required to share the location of their middle mile infrastructure, although this appears as though it may be changing in the next few years according to new rulemaking out of the CPUC. So how much is enough broadband, and what does speed mean? The FCC's Broadband Household Availability Guide lists 3 speeds. We have basic service, which is 3 to 8 megabytes per second download. We have medium service, which is 12 to 25 megabytes per second, and advanced service, which is service that exceeds 25 megabytes per second. Of course, all of these speeds are in download because when it comes to household use of broadband, the more important number is the download number. As we can see here, generally speaking, the more people in a household using more and more advanced applications such as teleconferencing tend to creep into higher demands for broadband service. Thus far on our broadband project, I'm happy to announce that we have come before the board and been approved for a memorandum of understanding with the Golden State Finance Authority, which is an RCRC affiliate, for a broadband strategic plan grant to the Federal Economic Development Administration for conceptual network designs. What this would do is it would allow us to understand where broadband middle mile and last mile fiber lines should go to provide the most efficient service at the least expensive price. We also asked for and received a joint powers authority with Golden State Connect Authority, which is another RCRC affiliate for broadband demonstration projects. Recently, we applied for the Federal Emergency Connectivity Fund to provide laptops and hotspots to the Yuba County Library for K through 12 students who may not have the most reliable internet at home or devices accessible to be able to do their homework, to be able to get their studies done. We've also been closely monitoring broadband middle mile CPUC rulemaking R209001. And what this is the state is proposing a new statewide middle mile network along the highway system, which will bring middle mile along highways 20, 65, and 70. In our participation in this rulemaking, we have requested that they expand this middle mile to the foothills along the roads Loma Rica, Marysville, and LaPorte, among others, and from Highway 65, just in the southernmost area of the county, through Wheatland to the east side of Beale Air Force Base, up to Highway 20 that way. In addition to this, we have completed the broadband master plan with contractor firm Valley Vision, with funding provided by the Yuba Water Agency, for which I thank the directors, including those in attendance. And on that note, I also plan on providing a separate, more detailed presentation specifically on the broadband master plan to the Yuba Water Agency. In addition to these items, I also personally serve as the single point of contact for all broadband inquiries, permits, projects, and planning department entitlements to streamline approvals through our county processes. The broadband master plan has provided the following on broadband availability within Yuba County. From this, we know that at least 32.1% of households are unserved at the level of 6 download, 1 upload megabytes per second. 34.5% of households are unserved at 10.1. 47.9 are unserved at 25.3. As CPUC data is reported by the ISPs, these estimates, it is likely that the availability of broadband is actually lower than what is currently being reported in the ISP data. Validating the broadband availability will require household outreach and the use of tools such as CalSpeed. CalSpeed is a CPUC tool that enables households and businesses to test their actual broadband service. This data is used by the CPUC to audit the ISP reported data and may make areas that wouldn't otherwise be eligible for federal grants actually eligible. So there is an advantage to us to do this to be able to save funds. From the broadband master plan, we have the following residential broadband adoption graphic here, which according to the CPUC data, only 20 to 40% of households north of Highway 20 have a reliable 6.1 megabytes per second connection. We have the following broadband cost estimates from the broadband master plan. The cost outlay is for the cost of broadband deployment of 25.3 megabytes per second to all households in the county. The most expensive scenario would be a 100% fiber to the home model at a cost of $28,235,671. The cost of broadband deployment of 100 download, 20 upload megabytes per second to our business community. The outlay is for 100% fiber to the business, $102,497,609. These, of course, are all in 2020 US dollars. We've also listed other deployment scenarios to households and businesses respectively at less expensive values, which have as a component wireless internet service towers, reducing the need for fiber to be deployed. On this topic, while these numbers are very high, I would like to just indicate that it is likely that a combination of state and federal grants that are becoming available now, in addition to private sector investments that these state and federal grants will stimulate, will contribute meaningfully to the investments needed to get our households and business community connected. From the Broadband Master Plan, I have the following recommendations on policy for the board. I would ask the board to consider at a later date a dig once, dig smart ordinance, which promotes the placement of fiber or conduit. Conduit is a line that actually contains and protects fiber at a lower cost, facilitating fiber to be deployed later anytime work occurs in the public right-of-way. How this would look is anytime the public right-of-way is disturbed for a project, for example, an encroachment permit, I would coordinate with a third-party middle-mile fiber installer selected by the board to place either middle-mile fiber or, if cost-prohibitive, conduit to run future middle-mile fiber. As the cost of installing fiber is much more expensive, it is anticipated that having the option of laying fiber, or if considered to be fiscally unsustainable. A null option would be cost effective. Our second policy recommendation is a master license agreement, which would provide an objective standard for ISP co-location on county assets such as facilities, communications towers, streetlights, and traffic signals. Leasing space to ISPs will also contribute funds to the county that can be used at the discretion of the board. Our broadband streamlining for projects, it would be the overhauling of permit fees and streamlining the environmental review process. A broadband master environmental impact report would save project applicants such as ISPs significant sums of time and money, making the regulatory climate in the county much more friendly to our private sector investments. Generally speaking, due to the significant costs associated with updating broadband within the county, we recommend a public-private partnership model, otherwise known as a P3 approach. This approach entails partnering with ISPs and third-party middle-mile providers for shovel-ready broadband projects. I recommend this approach to the board as some of the state and federal grants require the county to act as the lead agency with ISPs or third-party middle-mile installers in order to receive funds. Generally, I have the following recommendations that I would request the board's support for. I would request the support for a residential goal of minimum household broadband speed of 25.3 megabytes per second by 2030, and the support for a business goal of 100 download, 20 upload megabytes per second by 2030. The approach that I would recommend and what I would request from the board at future dates is the approval to apply for specific state and federal grants to expand broadband infrastructure. On this last note, I would like to indicate to the board that I will be returning to you to request for permission to apply for grant opportunities as they become available, as well as asking your board to consider implementing the specific policy recommendations I've offered on policies such as Dig Once, and providing regular updates to your board on the progress of the broadband project. For now, I request your approval for the broadband master plan, and I thank you all very much for your time.
Questions from the board?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I've got so many questions.
All right, then I'll go first.
Yeah, and then Gary is our resident IT person, I guess.
So for underground, it cost $100,000 to $400,000. Why the range?
That's actually a great question, Supervisor Fuhr. Generally speaking, in foothill regions, areas that are not comprised of clay type soils, areas that have, for example, granite, the expense, the majority of the expense is trying to get through those more difficult to get through soil types.
So specifically, the foothills are a problem again for us. All right, that's fair. The other question I had is the CPUC rule that you mentioned. Is that a state funded? So when they make the rule saying we're going to go out Loma Rica Road or we're going to go out these other roads, the CPUC is saying that, but then who funds those extensions?
Those are actually funded through appropriations by the state, which is why we are requesting that the state expand the network at no cost to us to those areas.
Perfect. And then it's $28 million to hook up every single residence, but why is it quadruple to hook up every business?
So there are issues associated with being able to install the infrastructure for much higher speeds. So the speed that we are requesting for residential is 25.3. And the speed for businesses is 100 download, 20 upload. And the increased network requirements are factored into that higher cost.
Can you give me dive a little deeper on what those extra costs are for businesses being at a higher speed?
Supervisor Fuhr, I would be happy to provide you with the contact, Dr. David Espinosa. He has a PhD in telecommunications with Valley Vision. He was the architect for the broadband master plan. I'd be happy to get you in touch with him.
Excellent, thank you.
So Supervisor, one additional thing to add to that, which might help with your question, I believe it also has to do with the number of locations in the county that those speeds are currently available. So, you know, there could be businesses in the county today that have 25.3, for example, but they don't have access to 100. So if you set the speed limit at 100, then there are more places that you have to deploy to than if it's just at 25.
Sure, my thought was just simply that there's a lot more residences than there are businesses. And so for the cost to be so much higher, what the qualitative difference was, because there's just so many more residences. Thank you.
Was that a motion?
Well, I wanted to give you the rest of you time for his questions, but I will make the motion in advance.
So we have a first. Before we move on, then, since we have a first, we need to accept a second, and then we'll take continued comments and questions.
So,
Is
Gary?
that a second?
No.
Okay. Well, I don't want to be a stickler, but we have a motion on the floor, so before we continue discussion, we have to have a second. So, I'll second.
Okay.
Okay. And okay, now we can proceed with comment.
Well, to me, it almost seems like we're coming off the assumption that there's hardly any broadband or internet connectivity in the county. And Gary, is that?
So in some areas of the county, that's very true, particularly at appropriate speeds.
Nearly 50%, according to his chart, and that's from the CPUC, which we also was told is just propaganda from the ISPs. Is that the right word?
If I could, through the chair, I believe, and maybe this will help, the CPUC is relying on reporting from the internet service providers, and the internet service providers, I can attest based on my own service provider at my house that they tell me that I have 25 megabits per second download. I have that certain times of the day, and other times of the day I might only have half of that because they just don't have enough capacity to serve that for everybody that's on their network. And so there is some underreporting, but what the internet service providers have reported to the CPUC is that about half the households in Yuba County do not have that 25.3 speed.
And I would add to that the reporting is by census block. And so if one service address in a census block can receive the speed, then they count the entire census block as having availability to that speed, which is of course ludicrous.
So it's mainly the foothill region that we're having the problem.
And rural areas of the county and the valley as well. But I would think mainly the foothills. But there are areas in the valley that also have maybe less than reliable internet or not adequate speeds available to them.
Through the chair. About 10 years ago, I got the vice president of Comcast on my radio show. And since I have a program that if you live in Yuba County, you go to school in Yuba County, you qualify for $10 a month from Comcast. And, we tried actually to see if people would respond to that. But basically, we have to come in and get them off their couch and throw them down to sign up for a $10 internet. And a lot of people just don't make that effort to get involved.
So,
okay.
Are you comfortable that by the time this hard wire gets installed, that it won't be obsolete because of satellite service?
So this is a great question. From what I've been researching on the Starlink network, my understanding is that it has many of the same problems that wireless internet towers do, in that it is reliant on good weather and lack of tree cover and other potential obstructions. This is the case currently with Starlink, according to articles that I've read in reviews for that. At this point, I placed the 2030 goal with the intent that that level of service would still be satisfactory.
So there's other satellite services though that people can subscribe to, right? Like, is it HughesNet or some of these other ones?
Correct.
And are they halfway effective or?
No, less than halfway effective.
Less than half?
They tend to be extremely slow, not necessarily as far as overall download speed, but something called latency, which is how fast you can send something between the satellite and your computer. And so if you're doing like downloading a file, they can work fairly well because they kick off the process and they can send large chunks of data at a fairly high speed. But they don't do very well with interactive type things. And so if you're trying to have a video conference or play a game or have a phone call, well, phone call doesn't require necessarily a lot of data, but those kinds of things satellites struggle with, and they also can struggle in weather, as mentioned. So
there isn't really a service that people in remote areas that we could subsidize rather than try to run hardwire to them.
It's my understanding, current technology of satellite-based internet, particularly traditional satellite-based internet like HughesNet, is not a very good solution for internet access. So,
if I may, Google does currently have a project based upon something called Project Loon, where they are experimenting with being able to transmit actual middle mile broadband bandwidth across long distances. There is a test project in I believe, Kenya for transmitting wirelessly at much lower cost, about 20 kilometers. My understanding is that this sort of technology will start being more and more available, and I have reached out to that team in hopes that we may be able to do something to modernize and to reduce the projected costs using newer technology.
Yeah, well, that's my concern, I guess, is that by the time the hardwire stuff gets installed, it'll be obsolete and you can get better, quicker stuff from the air.
So technology changes, but I would just comment on that at a recent broadband session that I was at the conference that I was recently at. That was a discussion that someone asked, right? We're kind of putting, all of our ducks in the basket with respect to, or eggs in a basket with respect to fiber. And, the response was essentially, that's the best technology we have. I mean, there's no guarantee for the future, but essentially, data can travel at light speed through fiber, and we keep figuring out how to put more and more data through that strand of fiber. And so the technology isn't really, the limitation isn't necessarily in the median itself, the fiber, it's the technology on both ends that's used to send the data. So to quote someone in that session, it's about as close as you can get to future-proof at this point in time. So putting fiber in, because you continue to use the fiber, you upgrade the technology on both ends. Now you can send more data through the fiber than you could last year.
Okay.
Anyway, that's what was shared. So, well, I have a couple comments as well. So, but if the rest of the board's done.
Go ahead.
So, love the policy recommendations and just the general recommendations, but I do want to talk a little bit about the 25.3 requirement for residential by 2030.
I apologize, Supervisor Bradford. This was structured as a goal.
Okay. Well, then my point's probably even more accurate if it's a goal. I really struggle. 25.30 is not adequate now, or 25.3 is not adequate now, and you could argue that 125. I don't remember what the download was, but
I apologize. It's 100 download, 20 upload.
Okay, 120. That's even maybe on the lower end of where service should be. Obviously, I understand we can't necessarily set a goal of a gig up and a gig down, which would, be my preference, but I understand that's not realistic. If we're setting goals, I believe pretty strongly that the 120 should be probably across the board. And I know that might be certainly challenging in some areas. And I think that the way you phrased it as a goal, I think is what's important. That's where we should set our sights. And, if there are certain areas that's just not feasible, then, but I'm a little worried that if we say 25.3, we're going to have providers come in and say, yeah, we can do 25.3. And, maybe they could have done 120 or whatever. So on the NACO Telecommunications and Technology Committee, which I'm on, we had a really robust discussion recently about this because the committee wanted to make a recommendation to NACO of what is the minimum broadband speed that we think we should be looking at nationally. And it was a hard discussion because there are places that you just might never get to, a certain thing. And so one of the things they talked about, and I'm not suggesting that we do this, but just to throw it out there as part of the discussion, is when they were working with providers, that they're incentivized based on speed, right? So, and this may be more of a state and federal thing than the county, but it might, if we're giving out grants from a county perspective or contracts, it might apply in that, you can provide 25.3, well, we'll give you 20% of the cost. Oh, you're going to do 100, we'll give you 50% of the cost. Oh, you're doing gig, we'll give you 70% of the cost, right? So that the amount of investment by the government went up the faster the speed that they were producing. And so it created an incentive, which is actually the opposite of my understanding of how they're incentivized today, or in the past, I will say. They've been incentivized where the feds or the state set a minimum level and all the ISPs take grant money to get up to that minimum level. And then a couple years later, the minimum level's raised and they all take grant money again to go up to the next step, to where, so it's really not a good final approach. Taxpayers keep paying over and over again for each bump in speed, to where if you maybe, they paid a little more earlier, they could have gotten a little higher and made a little more future-proof. So just something for consideration, but I definitely, if goal is the word, I would personally prefer to see 120 there, particularly since it's 2030 and a lot's going to change in the next 9 years, right? So anyway.
To the chair, shouldn't it be divided a little bit by ease of installation? We got places we can't even put water pipes in. Well, certain areas are going to have to suffer. So, flatland, we can possibly set a goal for that, but in the hills, you aren't going to have stuff up there for years.
You can use different technologies to help that happen. It's more doable to kind of have fiber to the home in the valley. That's more financially feasible. But as you get into more rural areas, and in particular areas like the foothills, you may struggle to have fiber to the home, but when you get the fiber middle mile in, then you can use wireless, fixed wireless technologies to help deliver the last bit of data. So you have to use a different approach, a different technology, but you can still serve many of those folks that way. So anyway.
I also had one more question, and it's actually to Mike Lee, if that's all right. The dig once, dig smart, how is that going to affect us? Because everything you've done so far is goals and objectives, but nothing is a requirement or a funding source at this point. Is that right? Correct?
That is correct, Supervisor Fuhr.
And so the dig once, dig smart, would that also just simply be a goal, or would that be something that we're now making a rule?
The intent with the dig once, dig smart is what it would do is anytime one of these projects to disturb the public roadway would occur, I would get notified of that project, and there would be an option based upon a cost analysis of whether or not it would be financially feasible, and if so, the county would have the opportunity to coordinate with its partners, P3s, things like that, to deploy whatever option is deemed financially feasible.
Excellent.
So if I could, through the chair, to answer that, so it wouldn't be a goal; it would be an adopted policy.
Mike, you're off the hook.
So if I could, through the chair, I just want to make sure that this isn't missed. This isn't a District 5 issue. This is a county issue. So you have households in all of your districts, including District 5, that are impacted by this, and all of the businesses. You know, there's, maybe I shouldn't say all, but there's very few businesses currently in Yuba County that have the 120 when you look at it overall. So we have a long ways to go. And to Supervisor Bradford's point, we're aiming, right now, the minimum should be 25.3 per household and 120 in the year 2021. Who knows what it's going to be by the year 2030 of what we'll need. And so I understand Supervisor Bradford's point of needing to aim higher. So an alternative could be that the equivalent to today's goal needs to be set in 2030. And so if 25.3 turns into 120 in the future, then we want to stay. We want to keep that same level of service. I think that's our overall. That's our goal. Is that the current 25.3 for households? That's a standard that appears to be satisfactory for most household needs, and the 120 is a satisfactory standard for most businesses. And so we want to make sure we have that level of service for our households and our businesses as we move forward. And that's really our overall goal. But it is my point, and the reason why I came up to the podium is I just wanted to make sure the board, all the 4 board members here today, understood that it's impacting all 4 of your districts, and then of course District 5 is probably the most severely impacted. But it is a countywide issue, not a District 5 issue.
All right, through the chair, we're having a situation with emergency equipment getting up to some of the hill locations, and we have a plan on restricting building where they haven't widened the road. So are we going to dig smart at that point in time? We're going to include that.
That'll be part of the policy that we'll bring back with some detail on the fiber itself, and I believe this point was made by Supervisor Bradford. You know, but fiber is definitely going to be part of the future. We don't know if it'll be, you know, the end all be all. There'll probably be other technologies that emerge, but I think the backbone will still be fiber, and so we need fiber in as many locations as we can in the county so that we can accommodate future technological improvements, you know, that'll enable us to go farther.
Okay.
Whether more than likely through wireless technology.
I called the question before.
Okay. Well, we have some public comments on Zoom. So are we ready to hear from Charles?
Charles, your chance.
If his broadband is working.
Hello.
Good morning, Charles.
Hello.
We can see and hear you.
You hear me? Good. Thank you. Good morning. Charles Sharp, Oregon House. I am in the foothills, in the most internet service. Most of the internet service is line of sight broadband, or maybe some satellites. To solve my connectivity issue, I put up a 30-foot telephone pole so the antenna could see over some neighborhood trees. It was that straightforward, and it just took some common sense to see how to do that. A broadband engineering consultant could help people in the foothills find a reasonable solution for their own situation. By the way, I don't quite have 25.3, but that's because I don't want to pay for it. I think I could if I up the amount every month. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Looks like we also have a public comment from, I believe it's Ted.
And now we've unmuted. You are being live restreamed via Yuba-Sutter .live, and I could turn my video on here, I suspect. Let me get that to happen. Thank you. A couple of comments. Supervisor Bradford has been very accurate, I think, in his description of some of the issues with satellite and also with wireless connectivity. It just isn't there yet. There's a lot of people that are hearing about 5G and thinking it's going to be the answer to everything. It's not, because it's not widely deployed and won't be for quite a while. And it isn't likely to be deployed widely by private business because the number of people who would potentially subscribe just isn't there yet. So that's an issue. I think what the county is looking at doing overall is a very smart idea to assist in making sure that Yuba County has the ability to do economic development, because we can attract businesses and because we can support working at home, which I think we're going to find is a much wider way of doing business in the future. People will locate here in perhaps the foothills because they like to live there, but they want to have the same kind of connectivity, or at least something reasonably so, that they might have in a more urbanized area, say the Sacramento area. The other problem is that there's a limited amount of space or spectrum into which you can deal with putting broadband signals or internet type connectivity, and it's finite, and it's a problem for the FCC to try to allocate all of that. We've seen various jiggering around. You may have had to rescan your TV lately as a result of the repack of television signals to make room for more broadband. But as that may develop, I think the plan of doing the last mile wirelessly with fiber that is high capacity and really delivers that capacity to the area is an excellent idea. And I think the faster you can go, the quicker you do it, the better off Yuba County is going to be. And I hope that's helpful moving forward.
Great, thank you, Ted.
Yep.
Any additional public comments? Okay, I do not see any in the room or on Zoom. So I know we have a motion, we have a first and a second, so it's to approve the broadband master plan, and I think we provided some direction, right? So, okay, so roll call vote, please.
Through the chair, who did the second motion, please? Hey, Supervisor Vasquez?
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer?
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr?
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford?
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher is absent. Motion passes.
Great.
Thank you very much for your time, Board. I will do what I can to bring actionable, effective policy to you on this issue as soon as possible.
Great, thank you, Ian. So I'm guessing we probably have about 10 to 15 minutes before closed session. Does anyone need a break, or are we able to push through? I'll look down this.
I think a break's called for.
A break's called for. Okay.
Sure, why not?
We will take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll resume after that.
All aboard! We can show you how. Live streaming can be simple and not expensive. You may already have the basic tools right in your hand. But it's more than just pushing live to communicate effectively. That's where Yuba-Sutter.live and Live Streaming YS on Facebook can help you. Make it easy to jump in. Just give us a call at 530-301-2931 or visit our website, www.yuba-sutter.live. Yuba-Sutter's home of live streaming and live streaming tools, live streaming services, technology, and training. Live streaming is yuba-sutter.live.
Okay, we are going to move on to item 570, 2021. County Administrator, adopt resolution supporting wildfire preparedness and prevention.
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the board. So the item before you today is actually an item that Supervisor Fletcher kind of initiated, brought to my attention. It's an item that he's been working with supervisors in other counties on that are impacted by wildfire. And the hope is that having multiple counties adopting a similar resolution, kind of pledging their commitment to doing their part as a county for wildfire preparedness and prevention, to try and take that kind of coalition and use that as kind of a driving force for the state to make sure that the state is also doing their part on wildfire preparedness and prevention. And unfortunately, Supervisor Fletcher is not here today to put that in his own words, but I did my best to deliver that message. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from board members?
I asked Supervisor Fletcher that question. Yeah, I was going to say he was, if the four board members are supportive of moving forward, he doesn't need to have his name on the the resolution due to his absence. He'd much prefer for it to move forward so that he can continue to work with the other counties. Yes, yeah. So I have the next presentation under ordinance of public hearings will involve our OES planner.
Oh, great.
But this item I'm presenting to the board.
So was that a motion from Supervisor Vasquez? Okay, and a second? Okay, have a first from Supervisor Vasquez, a second from Supervisor Blazer. Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, not seeing any, then roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez?
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer?
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr?
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford?
Yes.
And Supervisor Fletcher is absent. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. And Mary, could you read the heading under ordinances and public hearings for me, please?
Yes. If you challenge in court the action or decision of the Yuba County Board of Supervisors regarding a zoning, planning, land use, or environmental protection matter made at any hearing described in this notice, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at such hearing or in written correspondence delivered to the Yuba County Board of Supervisors at or prior to such hearing. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual or group.
Okay, great, thank you. And next up will be item 538, 2021, Emergency Services Public Hearing. Hold public hearing and adopt resolution adopting the 2021 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan. And so I will open the public hearing.
Morning, Chairman Bradford, members of the board. I'm John Stone, Yuba County Office of Emergency Services Planner. I'm here to present the 2021 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan update. This is an update from the previous 2026 mitigation plan. I'll do a quick rundown of the 4 phases of emergency management, of which this is very integral. There's prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. The Local Hazard Mitigation Plan encompasses all of these, not just preparing for disasters, securing the lives, welfare, safety of the people of Yuba County, but it'll also affect how we get money from the federal government and the state once we've got into our relief efforts. It's any sustained action taken to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to human life, property, and the environment from hazards. Obviously, the county has quite a few. We're in a long drought and fire season until we were in flood season. These measures to reduce the chance of disaster happening will reduce the damaging effects of unavoidable disasters, reduce loss of life, property damage, and economic hardship, and makes the community more resilient and disaster resistant. It's a long-term fix. It's basically our game plan once a disaster happens, everyone's on board within the county, all the different organizations from sheriff's office to fire to OES. Again, there's more hazards with more damages nowadays. Most recently, I'm sure we all saw the landslide on 70 in Plumas. They always have landslides, but due to the burn scar, it was significantly worse. So with the proper local hazard mitigation plan and working with our partners, we can mitigate those or at least be better prepared for them. So on average, each dollar spent on mitigation saves society an average of $6 in avoidable future losses in addition to saving lives and preventing injuries. I think that kind of belies the point. Yes, it's a good investment, 1 for 6, but on the other end, the loss of life, the stress of not knowing where family members are, you can't put a price on that. But I think it's in scale with our preparation that we can avoid those, and people know that we are looking out for their best interests, and we've taken every precaution we possibly can. Also, it is a requirement to get funding from the federal government through FEMA. It is part of the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000, the DMA 4-phase or CRS 4-step process for single or multi-jurisdictional plans for counties, cities, and special districts, of which we have quite a few here. Makes us eligible for FEMA pre- and post-disaster funding before we've even gotten into post-relief. We can start getting funds through Cal OES via FEMA and start our rebuilding process. It's also an opportunity for agency collaboration, building mitigation partners, of which we have several that helped produce this plan with us, and most importantly, to promote long-term resilience. So the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 requires jurisdictions to have an approved local hazard mitigation plan to qualify for FEMA mitigation funding under hazard mitigation assistance programs such as BRIC, HMGP, FMA, or severe repetitive loss. Again, like the unfortunate issues with Dixie, they've hit with a wildfire. Now they've got horrible cases of flooding. And this is just a quick breakdown of how FEMA's 4 plan and the 10-step DMA CRS planning process. So those are all within the FEMA course. It's just broken out into 10 pieces, from getting organized to adopting the plan and implementing the plan, and then revising it, such as the revision that we have before you today. We had several participating jurisdictions, not just in the county, the reclamation district, the Yuba County Water Agencies been very helpful in helping with preparations, levee building, everything like that. Obviously, the Sheriff's Office and Fire are always a great help and service to us, and they had a great amount of input in this. Throughout our risk assessment, we did hazard identification, likelihood of a scenario, obviously, wildfire, flooding is our big ones, down to earthquakes and how vulnerable we are. Throughout the process, we talked about the frequency, likelihood of future occurrences. Obviously, flooding and wildfire are the most prominent here. Seasonal patterns, again, we've left one season and we've quickly entered another. Vulnerability assessments, Public Works had a great input with this. Building structures, propensity to receive damage, how well our infrastructure can hold up to these disasters. If we have to bring in state or federal assets, can we move them in here to assist? Capability assessment, determining our technical, administrative, and financial, fiscal abilities to implement mitigation initiatives, and evaluating the effectiveness of each mitigation purpose, looking for gaps, shortfalls, and as we continue to revise these every 5 years, we'll start to address more and more, as different disasters occur and we start to learn from our mistakes and our planning process. Identification, it goes everything from climate change to dam failure. I was just at Camp Far West for their dam exercise last week, and I can assure you that when it comes to dam failures, flow-wise water issues, everything does go downstream, and seeing them put that into effect really brought home how important working together with all these organizations are, and how dependent we are upon each other's. Everything from levee failures to wildfires and tornadoes. Hopefully we don't see too many of those. And this is just a quick breakdown of a disaster declaration history. over the last 71 years here. As you can see, there's been quite a few. I would note, though, that a lot of those have been mitigated thanks to all the work with the water agency and through the levees and the reclamation districts as well as the county. Development of the mitigation plan, again, we had a great deal of input. We had goals using our inundation mapping to see what areas were more likely to flood, what had changed since the last large flood occurrences, using data from wildfires that had come through before. And then, you know, input with the Fire Safe Council, the effects that they've had with their tree limb and chipping programs has been pretty vital, and it's a really good program. I just wanted to point out that a lot of people have done a lot of great work in hazard mitigation here in the last several years. Our goals were, again, to provide a safe place for the people of Yuba County to work, live, be free from natural disasters. Obviously, that's impossible, but I think that this hazard mitigation plan puts us far along the way to help ensure that they are. Identifying at-risk population structures, critical facilities, and we're also looking at future development areas and redevelopment areas. And then public education, everything from having Russ and Rachel, the PIOs, sending out social media, reaching out to print media, mailers and everything else, making sure everyone's aware of the potential for disasters in this area. Categories of mitigation measures: prevention, property protection, structural projects, natural resource protection have all gone into this. We've been brought in with emergency services and public education, reaching out to the public, letting them know everything from a public safety power shutoff to a risk of local flooding as we had this weekend. We went over several different strategies before we came up with this plan: reduction of hazards, actions that affect the hazards itself, reduction of impacts. Obviously, we've mitigated some of the flooding with levees. Public Works was out, you know, everything from clearing debris to make sure that sewage didn't bubble up. We didn't have an absorbent amount of flooding on the roads causing traffic accidents. You know, not a direct flood-related injury, but when you've got 7 months of oil sitting on the road, you know, it will affect driving. It's not just a one-stop, you know, there's a flood or there's a fire, there are after effects that have to be felt. And this is just a quick show of what an area looks like before and after mitigation efforts. You can see on the top left there that there's been quite a bit of the earth disturbed, but the underbrush has been cleared out. And then just a quick review of the mitigation criteria for selecting mitigation measures: whether it'll work, if it's cost beneficial, is it affordable, legal, and then again, is it enough to properly protect the people of Yuba County? And these are our updated goals. I won't read through them individually, but it's minimizing risk of vulnerability, protection for critical infrastructure and people, hitting public awareness through our PIOs, and just getting the word out through social media, print media, Facebook. Support partners in private and public sectors, again, Yuba Water Agency, the reclamation districts, all the offices that reside within Yuba County, and maintaining FEMA eligibility and position Yuba County for reimbursement. In our actions, we had 38 mitigation actions and projects covering the range of mitigation categories, 8 multi-hazard mitigation actions, 1 climate change, 3 dam. Obviously, that's a big worry. Luckily, our infrastructure is pretty well shored up for that. Drought, water shortage, earthquake, flood action, levee, pandemic, severe weather, and wildfire. And following the adoption of the plan, we've asked for public input. It's been put out in the on our webpage. We've reached out to local newspapers. We even have a copy of the 1,200-page document in the board office right now. And then our next step will be implementation of the plan. We'll address any shortcomings, learn from this one, and then in 5 years, hopefully I will see you all with an even better plan to ask for. So at this time, we would like to ask that you adopt the resolution to adopt the 2021 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Great. Thank you, John. Any questions from the board or comments?
I had a couple questions. So on the local flooding that happened over this last weekend, what did the plan, how did it assist us, and what is it going to be do better even next time?
So, well, we learned a lot from it. We used the inundation mapping. Public Works was pretty well prepared. They knew the well, not the hot spots, but the wet spots, and kept debris clear from drainage, everything like that. They were, you know, I wouldn't say pre-deployed, but they were kind of pre-positioned to take care of that. You know, just going through our inundation mapping, you know, if we're expecting 10 inches of rain, these are where we're going to see a lot of flooding, and it helped them just get better prepared. And then they did a great job. I was talking to them throughout the weekend, and yesterday, Mr. Lee was still out driving around chasing down floodwaters. So it did help quite a bit. Again, there are limits to what we can predict, but it did give us a pretty good heads up, I feel.
Okay, and so then we were already on top of it, so there's not going to be any further improvement to see, or what?
No, we'll start, so everything, you know, the environment, you know, as rainwaters come through and, you know, perhaps undercut some of the areas, or the flooding has killed vegetation, we're going to have to add that into our planning. You know, those areas that have been hit, unfortunately, they tend to get hit worse and worse. I grew up in a rather flood-prone area in the Midwest, and unfortunately, I've seen that happen quite a bit. But using this and continually updating, learning from every time that we have localized flooding, I think we can get better and better at this.
In regards to the Orville Dam failure, our plan that we had previous, what did we learn from that? Was that well executed, our response to that, or was that not well executed?
I believe so. I was not here for it, but it was such short notice. It was unprecedented, but everybody that I've spoken to felt that it was handled very well. The evacuation was extremely short notice, but luckily with the SOs, everybody getting together, finding routes of escape for everyone, with that short of a notice, I feel that it was executed well.
So if the Butte County Sheriff declares imminent failure is about to happen, are we going to repeat that same process of putting 100,000 people on the road simultaneously, or what would be different?
No, actually, so we'll have a more orderly evacuation. We'll update our escape routes. Also, public messaging has gotten much better with Code Red, Zone Haven, everything else like that. People looking to our social media. We get the word out a lot faster now, and less people will be caught unaware, and the public has also gotten much better at reacting to those warnings, having go bags ready to go. You know, everything is, the whole process has improved quite a bit.
So will there be a staged evacuation, or would it still be everybody run for your lives?
I would expect a more orderly staged evacuation. Obviously, we'll
is that part of the plan?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so there would be sections and zones that would be said, hey,
well,
you at this point
yes.
evacuate now.
Whenever it happens, we'll get with the SOs. We'll also have to see, you know, if it's just an isolated occurrence, that's probably not what's going on. There might be localized flooding in other areas, and we're going to reroute that. But that is part of our planning process and something that we do game quite a bit whenever we get together.
If I could, through the chair, just to help with that question. Another part of the planning process is studying what went right and wrong in the past, and then also gathering additional information so that you can better prepare for the future. And so, for example, the inundation maps that basically dated back to the 1960s for the Orville Dam were updated post that event, and now there's more information on the true level of inundation that would occur in the valley, and then also the timing, you know, and which will feed into things like the zone, haven, and code. They're just this is kind of backing it all the way up, and John touched on it, but at the federal level, they recognize that communities weren't as prepared as they could have been for disasters, and then when disaster strikes, they're impacted. They have their hand out to the federal government for disaster assistance funds. And so that's really what precipitated the change in the year 2000, that if you want to be eligible for federal funds, plan in advance and have a plan. And then the federal government also made available mitigation funds to help you implement that plan so that when disaster strikes, you could minimize the amount of money you needed from the federal government. That's kind of what precipitated all of this. And the county has been successful, post 2000 on having a plan and then receiving dollars to do mitigation projects to kind of minimize impacts. I think a good example of that, and I'm going to have Public Works report out on this in their board staff reports, but if you look at over the last 20 years, if we would have had the rainfall event that we had this weekend, if we would have had that 20 years ago, we would have had substantially more flooding than what occurred. And it's because of all of these little incremental projects and improvements that we've been able to make throughout the county to kind of reduce potential disasters.
Any other board comments before we go to public comment?
I have a quick question. What role would Beal play in the mitigation?
So as a DOD asset, they're not part of our local hazard mitigation plan, but we've reached out to them. The short time I've been here since August, I've spent a week on base doing exercises for an anthrax issue, sea burning, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and mass casualties. And then we invited them to the Camp Far West exercise last week, using them as higher ground, bringing people onto the base. Right now, we're just at a exercise phase for it. Hopefully, we won't have to execute it, but they have been brought along. The 9th Medical Squadron and their Emergency Operations Center and I have spoke quite a bit over the last 2 months.
Thanks.
No problem, sir.
Okay, we'll move to public comment from Mr. Morrison. Mr. Morrison, you
Hi, guys. There we go. Thank you very much. Hi, guys. My name is Chris Morrison, and I got a chance to work with John Stone on this project. I'm actually one of the consultants that helped put this together. I wanted to open it up. If you guys had any other questions for the consultant, I can answer some of the questions that you guys asked earlier. If you want me to touch on some of those kinds of things and things like that, you let me know if you want me to ask. If you want to ask me any questions or have me answer anything for you.
Sure. On the pandemic that was listed, what would be the triggers and what would be the responses?
Okay, that's a great question. And there's not an answer for that yet. And here's why that is, okay? When FEMA and Cal OES, when we look at what is available dollars-wise through BRIC, through FMA funding, through HMGP funding, it's all tied to natural disasters. Okay, now here's the thing. A natural disaster, a pandemic doesn't fall under it. FEMA or Cal OES would say, well, that falls under your public health department. However, because there has been disaster declarations, FEMA disaster declarations for this, we have kind of a gray area here as to whether there's going to be FEMA funding available for pandemic, okay? Now, to come back to your specific question, we don't have an answer for that in this plan, okay? This plan basically talks about it and says there is a department inside the county. That's when John talked about the capability assessment, we talk about that there is a department inside the county who has been charged with putting those kinds of things together. When do we panic? Not panic, but when do we elevate things to the next level? When do we enforce lockdowns? When do we do those kinds of things? Because you have an existing department and because it's a FEMA gray area, this plan covers it in kind of a big picture view regarding that. And so the specifics for that aren't here. And that's because you have another department that would handle those specifics for you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Great question, by the way.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Morrison? Okay, thank you, Chris. We'll move on to Mr. Goforth. Neil, you should be good to go.
There we go. Good morning, Chairman of the board and all supervisors. Question about with the Orville Dam fiasco that we saw, the spillway, and knowing that we live in a high water area, can you speak about how we're going to move people through town? Because I had my own family stuck in traffic for hours. Fortunately, we didn't have an event, but we live where that's going to be reality one of these days. So if you could just touch on that, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, yes, sir, Mr. Guilford. By using Zone Haven Code Red, we get the warning out quite a bit earlier and get the messaging out. As far as congestion, direct traffic issues, that's a hard fight, but as soon as an issue like that occurs, us and the sheriff's office start finding better routes for people, and not just relying on one or two main thoroughfares. They have a very good knowledge of the streets, alleys, every road, highway, bridge along here. I think that throughout exercises like the one we conducted last week, we've gotten much, much better. I couldn't say for certain that you would head south on any particular highway, but I can tell you that it's something that we constantly rehearse, rehash, and make improvements on.
Yeah, one problem, and I won't ask any more questions. One problem that we see in high water events is the bridges get closed.
Yes, yes, that is a huge obstacle for traffic. But with the inundation mapping, as soon as we hear that, this trigger point's been hit, we aren't going to rely on those bridges at all. We're going to start immediate evacuations through the bridges and roadways that are available. It won't be an issue of a motorist being the first person to come across a bridge and realizing that it's completely inundated. With the mapping and the further exercising with the SOs, with all the reclamation districts, the water agency, and our office, I think we've gotten much better at that. And, the graders for all of our exercises have thought that the plans that we've come up with have worked pretty good. Obviously, though, nothing happens in a vacuum, right? So we'll probably see some minor flooding before, a large dam breaks. There was probably an issue that caused this inundation, but we continually update our planning and our response to that.
Thank you.
No problem, sir. Have a good day.
So just final kind of a follow-up question / comment related to that. I think it's great that the county has a plan next time around to kind of do a zone-based evacuation, kind of a little at a time, if a similar situation would occur. But it does seem realistic to me that if the public did not follow that zone-based recommendation from the county, we would essentially have the same situation, and there's little we could do to prevent that. So is that a correct kind of statement? Okay.
Some people will wait, some people will ignore it, and we suddenly have clogged arteries, and it would be a mess.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I will ask one more time if there's any public comment, any board comment. I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
I'll move to adopt the resolution supporting wildfire preparedness and prevention. I used to be able to talk.
I think it's the next one, right?
No, you're right. No.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Did I do that wrong? All right. 2021 Local Hazard Mitigation Plan.
I'll second.
Just for...
So we have a first from Supervisor Vasquez.
Yeah.
And 2 seconds from Supervisor Fuhrer. So roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez?
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer?
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhrer?
Yes.
Supervisor Bradford?
Yes.
And Supervisor Fletcher is absent. Motion passes. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Chairman Bradford, members of the board, for your time.
Okay, now we will move on to board and staff member reports. Supervisor Vasquez.
I'm going to pass on that right now. It's going to be a long meeting.
Supervisor Blazer.
Well, I was just happy to see the history preservation group here, like you've noticed also, Gary, and having a business downtown. I have trouble just knowing what is available. When are the museums open? When are the guided tours? So I'm hoping that this group will, facilitate that better.
Supervisor Fuhrer.
So in regards to that, I thought Sue's point about honoring commissions and volunteers, we do have a lot of people that participate, and having a little ceremony or an awards acknowledgement of how much volunteers matter and what they do and how they contribute is a great idea, and I would love to see us implement that. My second point is to thank my fellow members up here on the dais. I appreciate the IT expertise that we get either in fixing things or in knowledge when we're talking about broadband alternatives that get brought up, such as satellites. And Andy is close to my heart in everything he does and says. So, and I don't want to forget staff, who I also greatly appreciate. So, guys, you're doing all great work. And I don't know that we get honors but I'll nominate each and every one of you. And then my third point is in regards to the other presentation that was brought up to us. She had some questions. And so I guess I wanted to ask some questions to clarify. We have a contract to have Dr. Liu employed, correct?
Employment agreement, right?
Correct.
And that expires when?
It did not have a specified term, and there is a notice requirement. I don't have the contract right in front of me, but there is a notice requirement if either party wants to terminate the contract.
Okay, and so there would not be a severance pay necessarily. There would just be a notice, 3 months, whatever it is, and then that contract would be over?
I do believe there is a severance provision.
So she has an unlimited contract in period of time, and if at any point that contract ends, we pay her off.
You know, I don't want to answer to the terms of the contract without the contract in front of me because
Jill's here. She knows it off the top of her head, I'm sure.
I don't have it. So I would leave it at that. I can look it up.
I actually don't have the contract in front of me either, but I will say that that contract was approved as a public document in a board meeting. And I can get a copy to your board members if you'd like it.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, so it does have specific terms of notice by both parties. It also has a period of severance in the event that we choose to end that relationship.
Okay, and so even if you give notice and that it ends in 6 months, you still have to pay severance in addition to whatever the time period is?
No, that's not true. So it's just a period of time, and that period of time is the notice period, and that individual would remain unpaid during that period of time.
Okay, great. And then another issue that was brought up, I think, was an audit of the health department. I assume that we already audit the health department on a regular basis. Is that also a public document?
It depends on what you're referring to as an audit. I'm not certain how that term is being used. The Board of Supervisors under, I believe it's Government Code Section 25030, somewhere in that area, does supervise the conduct of all county officers and has the right to oversee the administrative aspects of any of the departments. But when we're talking about an audit, I don't run HHS, but I'd imagine they're subject to quite a few audits because they receive both federal and state funds. The extent to which those audits are public are probably the subject of quite a few state and federal regulations. So it would depend upon the nature of the audit that we're discussing and the regulations controlling those audits.
If I could, through the chair, maybe to offer up, typically an audit, there's like a financial performance audit. You know, did you spend the funds that were granted to you appropriately, et cetera? But I believe that Supervisor Fuhrer, what you're asking for is maybe a summary of activities that the health department is doing. Is that something that maybe the board would like a presentation from the health department on ongoing activities and planned activities?
To clarify, Courtney, did you want a financial audit, or what type of audit were you looking for specifically?
Thank you for asking for clarification. So it would be an investigation into what was the reasoning behind each of these health orders or this health advice, including county data and statistics. It would include emails regarding these types of materials, just what was put into the decisions made. It can include death certificates of the time period.
Sure. Can you do that through a request for public information? Is that I'm using the right word? Is that request for public information?
Yes, and we've answered requests like that. Now, some of the information is not subject to disclosure. It's the subject of exemptions, especially if you're talking about, you know, death certificates and things of that nature. they'd be subject to being redacted.
But as far as any memorandums about policy, that would be available?
It would, lawyer answer, it would depend. Preliminary memoranda, preliminary discussions, preliminary notes are exempt from disclosure under the Public Records Act. If a final policy was developed, then that would likely be subject to disclosure.
Okay.
And
So it's not so much the numbers or the math of it, but the reasons, the causes, and what was being done as directives. Is that accurate?
It's true, but I think we would like to see numbers that would validate those decisions. We have submitted a few FOIA requests or Public Records Act requests to the county. Those, we did not find results based on those public records requests. And a part of that reasoning is because, for example, the PCR tests go to a lab that is state run. And so we do not have authorization to look at those, but possibly through a greater investigation, those would be able to be accessed. And so we would be able to have more information as to what's really happening here.
Okay. So yeah, I guess what would be best is to more maybe fine tune your specific request to see if it is something that could be done. All right.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
Through the chair, on that note, can we find out what the definition of cases is?
Positive tests.
Because
it's
that
individual.
that's not a
test.
case. That's not the normal definition of cases. That might be a test. I had a stress test. I had a false positive. So that many cases imply a large problem, but 99.4% of the cases don't result in either hospitalization or death.
So,
and we're reacting
just to add to what
the cases, to the number of cases rather than to the results.
So to add what Supervisor Fuhrer said, it's someone who's tested positive. So, which is someone that could then spread it to others or be subject to,
Again, it's cases. It's not cases, it's tests, positive tests. Can we have a truth in description?
If I could, through the chair, maybe, and I understand that the focus is on COVID and case counts, et cetera, but getting back to I guess the original question, typical for a department would be to report out on activities to the board, to provide, if there's a group of citizens that want to investigate a department or audit department, typically they go through the grand jury, right? And the grand jury is the one that will investigate a department on a particular issue. And then the grand jury will report back to the board on their findings related to that. And so I would recommend that there's kind of two paths here. So if you have a group of citizens that want to investigate a department, their path is through the grand jury. But if the board has an interest in hearing a report out from a department about their activities, that's something that would be.
Excellent. Can we make a request to the grand jury that one of their investigative scopes is in the health department for next year? Because I think they receive requests from the public in regards to the grand jury. And you've already submitted that? Okay, well then I think that's taken care of. All right, thank you. And so then maybe, I think that covers it then. Thank you.
Okay. So do we want to do Mike Lee next, or do you want to go?
If we could, we had a significant rainfall event over the weekend, and as I mentioned in a previous presentation, we had a pretty well prepared Public Works Department, and I wanted to have Mike and Ed Lee, who's Community Development Director, and I believe Dan Peterson's on, Mary, but I think he phoned in, so he might be more difficult to identify. They can kind of report out on what took place over the weekend.
Yes, thank you, Mike Lee, Community Development. Thank you for letting us have a few minutes here this morning or afternoon. It's kind of on the brink here. As you know, we had a high severity storm over the weekend. We did ask the Public Works Director, Dan Peterson, to do a little report out. I wanted to personally get up myself and thank the crews for their hard work and dedication. Long, hard days working out in the pounding rain, challenge for anyone. And Public Works is near and dear to my heart. I ran the department for 15 years, and so it just means a lot to me to be able to get up here and publicly state and thank them for the hard work that they do day in and day out, but in particular on nasty weather days like that, where a lot of us sit inside our house and don't want to go outside. They're out there working long, hard days and hours. So, but I did want to pass it off to Dan Peterson for the specifics. And with that, thank you for your time.
Good morning,
Good
Dan.
morning to the chair. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good morning, Chairman Bradford, members of the board. We had a rather amazing weather event over the weekend. As many of you know, I am primarily a water resource engineer with an emphasis in hydraulics and hydrology. So I get excited about storms like this, and I hope I do not go into too much detail. What was predicted initially by the National Weather Service was a 5-year storm. What we ended up receiving exceeded a 50-year storm. It was somewhere between a 50 and a 100-year storm event. And what was unique about this is it was a greater than 50-year event for at least 5 different storm durations. This is important for a couple of reasons. A short-term rain event results in very high peak flows, which overwhelm ditches and culverts for a short period of time. A long duration storm event overwhelms detention basins, increases the water surface elevations in creeks and rivers, causing a backwater condition, which then results in water backing up into our storm drains, into our ditches, and causing localized flooding. Most of our drainage systems are designed in accordance with state requirements, which are pretty much laid out in the Caltrans Highway Design Manual. Typically, our drainage systems are designed for a 25-year storm, and we anticipate that in any storm that exceeds that magnitude, we will end up with flooding in a roadway, but it will not cause damage, structural damage to the roadway, to roadway facilities, or to any nearby structures. So in all honesty, our systems performed extremely well. And the reason they performed so well is because our road crew really did a fantastic job. They've been preparing for this storm for many, many days. And to put the order of magnitude into what they've done, we have 655 miles of roadway that the county owns and maintains. We have over 1,300 linear miles of ditches, and we don't even have an accurate number of how many culverts we have. It's over 2,000 culverts. We have 17 staff members on the road crew that maintain this entire system, and they were on 12-hour shifts, so we had 24-hour response times throughout the duration of the storm. We had 89 requests for public works assistance because of clogs or localized flooding or ditches that were overwhelmed. The preponderance of those were either ditches that overflowed into roadways, which is actually what we anticipate for a storm of this magnitude. We had a handful of roadside culverts that plugged up. Not surprising, considering first, it's the first year big rain event of the year, and second, because with all the recent fires that we've had, there's a lot of remaining fire debris that's still washing down and clogging culverts. We had a couple of slides, one of which I don't know if it's been cleared or not. One has been cleared. We had, I think, 15 or 16 trees that fell in the roadway that were removed. So overall, it was an amazingly large event. It was not predicted to be anywhere near that size. We did have some issues, most of which were minor. The only roads that I know of that are currently closed are Iowa City Road and Dairy Road due to localized flooding. But otherwise, we got through relatively unscathed. And I'm extremely proud of the road crew and the job that they did preparing for the storm and in responding to the storm as events unfolded.
Great. Thank you, Dan, and thank you to the road crew. Huge thanks to them. I know I had some constituents certainly that expressed concerns about road flooding and other issues, and they were able to, Public Works was able to come out and address those. So, and I know they had stuff to address all over the county. So certainly a lot of workload.
Yeah, if I may, Mike Lee again, add one comment. Thanks, Dan, for that detailed report. There was one significant area of street flooding, as Supervisor Bradford is aware of, down in the east side of Highway 70 in the River Oaks East community, the Lennar community that they're currently still constructing, and they were anticipating that was caused by some kind of blockage in the storm drain system that Lennar constructed. That particular area, we've been trying to get them to wrap up completion of their improvements so that the county could take over maintenance and accept them and take over maintenance. So those streets are not ours, and they have not been accepted by the county yet. And so, Lennar was ultimately responsible for that. So just wanted that to be publicly stated, because I'm sure we're going to get a lot of finger pointing and complaints to the county. So happy to answer any other questions if you have any, or Dan as well.
Any questions from the board?
Only 17 people out there, and they did a great job keeping the public happy with the flooding. And tell them thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Council, anything from you?
No, sir.
Okay, CAO Mallon?
Just one quick item. Assembly Bill 361 created a path for a board to take if they so choose during a state of emergency to continue to allow teleconference for not only the public but for the board members to participate via teleconference. And so Sutter County took this option at a past board meeting, and so I just wanted to check in with the board to see if this is something where is there an interest from our board to allow the same, where board members can participate via teleconference during an emergency.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I think that was a yes. I'm not
Yeah.
sure if it was unanimous.
Does this one require to be the pretext if it's an emergency related to health, or is this just I get to do Zoom? Just Zoom, totally okay, down with it. But if it's that there has to be this pretext of I'm going to die from a virus, then I'm not as excited about it.
I could give you a kind of a sample of the language. The draft resolution that would be similar to what Sutter County adopted. Now therefore be it resolved that the Yuba County Board of Supervisors, the recitals set forth above are true and correct and incorporated in the resolution. And a proclaimed state of emergency exists, and as a result of the emergency, meeting in person could present imminent risks to the health or safety of attendees. So it's general. It's not just a pandemic emergency, but there's an emergency that it would make sense to allow teleconference as an option.
Then I would suggest that there be a motion to direct staff to bring that back as an agenda item and a vote on the motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Vasquez?
Yes.
Supervisor Blazer?
Yes.
Supervisor Fuhr?
Abstain.
Supervisor Bradford?
Yes.
Supervisor Fletcher is absent. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
I think that would be real good during an emergency like the dam situation.
Like the Orville Dam that we could have zoomed in instead of came into Marysville and met in the board chambers?
The the people on Facebook, I had told everybody, you know, if something goes, you go straight out Hamptonville Road, and once you're past the Doolittle Gate, pull off the side of the road and pitch a tent because you're above the flood lane.
Well, they listened to you. I drove to Grass Valley that way, and once I got past Beale, it was people parked on both sides of the road. So
yeah, no, it's
okay. Just a quick comment, maybe even more on behalf of Supervisor Fletcher, because this is something that he worked on. But when we were at the NACO conference a while back in DC, and NACO is National Association of Counties, so it's like CSAC, but the national version. They have, we've got 3,000 counties in the US. Similar to CSAC and RCRC, they have a leadership team made up of, you know, like an executive committee and kind of a president of their board and that kind of thing that's selected by the individuals that are part of that. And so at the last NACO conference, Mary Jo McGuire from, I can't remember which specific county, but it's essentially the county where St. Paul is in Minnesota, was selected as the second vice president. So I guess that means in 2 years, she'll be the president of the organization. And so Randy has been fostering a relationship with her and is actually working with the water agency to bring her out for the Mountain County Waters thing tomorrow and to tour Yuba County so that she can understand what our needs and challenges are here in Yuba County so that she can, you know, for awareness as she leads this national organization of counties, that she'll have an awareness specific to our area. And so if you're going to Mountain Counties tomorrow, make sure and take the opportunity to meet with her. I know she'll be there. So anyway, just a heads up on that. So, and with that, we will go into closed session as listed on the agenda.
Did you know about all the stuff that happens and was part of it before you were chair, or have you been more active as chair?
For most of this, I knew about it. I know about it even when I'm not chair.
Because I don't know about any of this stuff.
Maybe you're not on the distribution list or something. It all comes in email.
I don't know any of the things.
Recording stopped.
To the desktop, it's not able to see that as a file. We're still connected to Zoom.